Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's start off talking about Kevin Owens. Now, arguably, if you take out the Triple H news yesterday, it's the biggest story in WWE right now is the future, or where does the future lie for former WWE Universal Champion Kevin Owens? And the answer is we don't know, but potentially it could be outside of WWE, because Kevin Owens is reportedly expected to leave WWE early next year. Now, as previously noted here on the channel, Owens and the Young Bucks have teased on Twitter this week that Owens may be joining his former Mount Rushmore stablemates, the Bucks and Adam Cole, in AEW. It was also revealed that Owens' contract with WWE expires in January of 2022 instead of 2023 due to the deal being restructured some time ago. Now, in an update, and this is according to John Alba, there is said to be, quote, very much an internal belief within WWE that Owens is leaving the company when his contract expires in January of 2022. It was noted that multiple WWE sources believe that Owens will leave the company when he's able to do so in January of next year. Now, while no other details were provided at the time, but if he does leave, it is likely that Owens will join his friends in All Elite Wrestling. Now, Owens, of course, is currently working on the SmackDown brand in a feud with the Happy Baron Corbin character. He was involved with a segment with Logan Paul and Corbin last week on SmackDown in a KO show segment. He signed with WWE in August of 2014. He's a former NXT champion, a former Universal Champion, a three-time WWE United States Champion, and also a two-time WWE Intercontinental Champion. Of course, if we hear any more details regarding Owens' future with WWE, we'll talk about it here on the channel. I think we will maybe talk about it in today's AEW news video. There's a lot of AEW news at the moment, so it's a bit difficult to kind of put that in there. When it comes to this, though, again, it's kind of WWE at this point. I think they can kind of tell the signs now when a talent is expected to leave or when a talent is going to go to an AEW or just leave the company in general, because since really 2019, they see the signs when it's either Jon Moxley, whether it's Adam Cole in this situation, whether it's Brody Lee, Matt Hardy, whoever it may be, who let their contract expire. I think Brody Lee was actually released, but Matt Hardy let his contract expire. Any of those guys, they realize when the writing's on the wall, and it kind of feels like that with Kevin Owens. I know Kevin Owens is a bit of a different situation, and we spoke about this before. Owens might be considered to be a different situation because he loves WWE and he's wanted to be a WWE superstar for his entire life. He got into pro wrestling to compete at WrestleManias and to have Royal Rumble matches and to be the WWE champion and all that kind of stuff. But I think at this point, it's kind of like Mick Foley said a couple of days ago, that at this point, the WWE of the 90s and the early 2000s, that just isn't WWE anymore. And it's kind of a case of what the wrestlers of this generation, or Kevin Owens' generation, fell in love with isn't WWE anymore. They may have fallen in love with watching WWE with the Attitude Era in the late 90s or the Ruthless Aggression Era in the mid-2000s, but that isn't WWE anymore. That environment isn't the same. That product isn't the same. That fan base isn't even the same anymore. It's a different product, it's a different style, it's a different way of just producing wrestling, and it's almost like different philosophies, isn't it, That just the way that WWE produces television, the way that they script pro wrestling, the way that they have their scripted promos, word for word verbatim, the way that they have their matches completely laid out, and the producers in the back are telling the wrestlers actively what to do in the ring via the referee, all that kind of stuff. That isn't the way that maybe Kevin Owens and other wrestlers like Adam Cole, like a CM Punk, like a Bryan Danielson, like whoever. It's not like that's not what the pro wrestling that they kind of fell in love with. And with the system the way it is in WWE, and you can argue, and I think it's a valid point about people like Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard not being in touch and going back to outdated philosophies like they had in the 1980s and the mid-90s. Especially the mid-90s. Again, you watch an episode of Raw or SmackDown right now, it does feel like that. It feels like an episode of Raw from the mid-90s of cartoonish characters or characters just with bad gimmicks, outdated gimmicks. and just weird booking decisions, all that kind of stuff. It feels like that at the moment, and it feels like AEW is the cool place to be, and not just necessarily the cool place because it's shiny, but the cool place because they're doing something different, and it feels like professional wrestling as opposed to sports entertainment. And it's no coincidence that at the time that WWE is saying we don't really want pro wrestlers anymore, we want sports entertainers, that these pro wrestlers that they have in the company, like Kevin Owens, like Bryan Danielson, like Adam Cole, go, you know what? I'll go to the pro wrestling company over the sports entertainment company any day of the week. And now it's not a question of money either. Previously, it could have been a case of, look, maybe I don't like it in WWE, but let's face it, it's the best place to earn money right now. That isn't really the case anymore. Can AEW offer the exact same amount as WWE? They can, but I think their budget is actually smaller, far smaller than WWE. And in reality, you have to remember, people always assume that AEW is the same in WCW in the sense of, oh, they're just offering big contracts. Well, they're not. Bryan Danielson asked AEW for comparable money, not the exact same, but comparable money for less dates and the opportunities to work elsewhere. Who knows if when these guys are coming over to AEW, they're getting bigger contracts. I don't even know if they are. Chris Jericho did. That's factually accurate. But I think Brody Lee, God rest his soul, said the same thing. And I think Matt Hardy said the same. And I think FTR said the same. That WWE offered them the biggest contracts in their career by a country mile. The biggest contracts in their career. And they turned it down because it's not always about the money. It's about feeling fulfilled. It's about being happy. It's about enjoying what you do and falling back in love with what you do. So I don't even think this is about money anymore as well. It's about philosophy, and it's about WWE's methods becoming so corporate and antiquated that these talents, these popular talents that are being misused, are starting to go over to AEW, and they're starting to see success. And I think Kevin Owens, a guy that was so pro WWE, you'll struggle to find a guy that's more pro WWE than Kevin Owens, because again, it's his dream. Even he at this point is kind of a case of like, you know what, I'm done with it. 7 years, I feel like I've done everything I can do. I could obviously myself think I can do more, and I'm capable of doing more, but the people backstage obviously don't feel that. And it's a case of going, you know what? It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it anymore. Especially as well, the schedule. AEW's once, twice a week. WWE's 5 nights a week. Still, even now, during this pandemic, they're back on the road full time. Kevin Owens got 2 kids at home and a family. If he can make, again, comparable money, and be at home more often, why wouldn't he want to do that? And again, that comes into it too. So I expect Kevin Owens to leave as well, unless WWE once again completely blows him out of the water. And I think at this point they might. The reason they might do it is because they've got to save face. Look at it. There certainly is a narrative forming now. There is an image forming. And I think it was Brody Lee, once again, who said in an interview with Chris Jericho after he left WWE and joined AEW, that he had some conversations with Triple H. And Triple H essentially said to him, look, maybe it is right for you to leave, but you have to remember as well that we don't want to give off the perception that sort of rats are jumping a sinking ship, if you will, and that everyone's leaving because WWE's done. And it kind of feels like at this point that they've kind of just forgotten that and go, yeah, you can leave. But from a fan's point of view, from an outsider looking in, it does look to be like a case of, but the people are jumping not a sinking ship, but it's just a really strange situation. But I agree. I expect Kevin Owens to leave at the end of his contract. Speaking of contracts as well, reportedly there was a lot of internal heat, over how recent contract situations have been handled with several WWE superstars. Now, of course, Adam Cole's contract expiring back in July caught people off guard in the company, and Cole himself by surprise. The same went for Pete Dunne's deal. Of course, there's no word yet on if Pete Dunne has re-signed, but we do know that he was offered a new deal with WWE last month. In an update, it was reported by Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service, yesterday, that there was significant heat in relation to people, quote, falling asleep at the wheel with the details and planning of the NXT contracts. Word is that this wasn't as much of an issue with the main roster, as several wrestlers have talked directly with WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon about their contracts. Now, as I mentioned previously, WWE renegotiated several contracts in 2019 ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic to adjust them for higher guarantees. There's no word yet on specific terms, but many of the wrestlers altered their deals at the time. It was noted that there was confusion about some contracts that fell in NXT and the transition between NXT and the main roster. After Malachi Black was released from the company earlier this summer and had just a 30-day non-compete clause instead of the traditional 90-day non-compete clause, WWE reviewed many of the talent contracts to make sure nothing else caught them by surprise. It appears this is where they were caught off guard by Cole and Dunn and their deals expiring very soon. It was reported, as I mentioned, that Kevin Owens' contract is set to expire in January 2022. Originally, it was set to expire in 2023 after he signed for 5 years in 2018, but the deal was restructured a few years back. Now the deal is expiring early next year. So there's a lot of sort of confusion going on with this whole contract situation, and it just makes, again, WWE look bad, really bad, and there's such a snowball effect in all of this. In reality, if WWE wasn't doing these budget cuts and all that kind of stuff, they might not have even found out about this. That's the crazy thing, because it kind of feels like, as the report said there, that they released Malachi Black, Aleister Black. He then shows up on AEW programming after just 30 days, and they go, wait a minute, he had a 30-day non-complete clause, not a 90. They then look over the contracts and go, wait a minute, when we were restructuring all of these contracts, we missed this. When Adam Cole's expiring, Pete Dunne's expiring, why didn't we know this? Now, I think this was to do with Canyon Ceman, who's since been fired, and some other names fired too. So it just, WWE falling asleep at the wheel, and this happens periodically over history. WWE and any pro wrestling company not being aware of contracts or contracts lapsing does happen, but every time it does happen, it always makes the company, whether it is WWE or Impact or WCW or whoever it's happened to over the years, just look so foolish, so foolish. How can you have a talent relations department and not know when your talent's meant to be leaving the company? Or the talent, in Adam Cole's case, not even know himself. When my contract's expiring, I thought that was in 6 months' time. What's going on there? It's just, it doesn't look good, does it? It doesn't look good at all. We have some Monday Night Raw ratings from this week's episode. As to be expected, it was down from last week due to the live Labor Day edition of the show. Raw drew an average of 1.849 million viewers on the USA Network, according to Nielsen via ShowBuzz Daily. This is down over 3% from last week's 1.907 million viewers. Raw drew a 0.52 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic this week. This is down over 3% from last week's 0.54 key demo rating. Raw ranked for number 3 in the night in terms of viewership on cable, behind college football on ESPN and Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox News. This is up from last week's 16 ranking for the night in viewership. Raw ranks number 2 for the night in the cable top 150 with its 0.52 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic. This week's Raw viewership and key demo, though, held up pretty well for the holiday, considering, as I mentioned, the viewership was down over 3%, 3.04, and the key demo rating was down 3.70. Raw viewership, though, was up from the same week last year, over 7%, 7.2%, while the key demo rating was up over 8% from the same week in 2020. So, to be honest with you, considering the show itself was really not that much to write home about, especially coming off that All Out event, they'll be happy with that. And I know it's kind of a case of you're going, well, another week so, and you criticize them for the ratings going down. I think WWE and a lot of people within the company would have probably actually thought that the ratings would have gone down far more than that, especially for a holiday episode. Traditionally, holiday episodes don't do well for WWE. So I think they'll take it. I always say, though, when you see stuff like this, so the ratings didn't go down that much. The people that did tune in didn't get to see anything that particularly great, though. And it's a case of, okay, how is that going to react next week? If it's still about the same or it goes up, then WWE are obviously doing something right. We can criticize people as much as we want, but if the ratings are still holding up, then they'll be happy. I think if you just look on the grand scheme of things, though, again, this is Monday Night Raw we're talking about, and they're happy with 1.8 million viewers. I think it speaks volumes, but I guess that's where WWE, and I guess that most importantly, that's where television is at the moment as well. Bray Wyatt has had his say slightly about WWE confiscating Bray Wyatt signs at live events. Now, earlier this week, Forbes' Alfred Conower pointed out how there was a, quote, support black wrestling sign in the front row during the tag team turmoil match on Monday Night Raw, which of course took place at the FTX Arena in Miami, Florida. Conower said he doesn't care, quote, how many incels get their Bray Wyatt signs confiscated as long as WWE doesn't confiscate such signs. On Wednesday, Wyatt took notice of Conower's tweets and was evidently unhappy with the wording. He said, quote, all you needed was the beautiful part of this tweet, the rest, ... Now, WWE security confiscated at least one fan sign relating to The Fiend at last month's SummerSlam pay-per-view. The fan in question was caught on camera making the sign during the kickoff show and was subsequently approached by security personnel. A correspondent inside Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas noted that the fan tried to resist, but was eventually forced to hand over the sign. At the time, Wyatt retweeted 2 photos of the fan sign. To be honest with you, of course support black wrestling, of course support equality and diversity in any forms of pro wrestling. But to be honest with you, I don't see, unless a sign is offensive, it's got swear words or it's inappropriate or whatever, then it's their prerogative to take it down. But I'm one of those people that, again, grew up in the late Attitude Era, early Ruthless Aggression Era, and you go back and watch those shows and you see all the signs. I think it's tremendous. Now, for a viewer inside the arena, is it conducive to a good viewing experience? Arguably not, because you can't see anything. I think a lot of people that have attended pro wrestling events people have had signs in front of them. The moment they go up, you're like, great, I can't see anything. So I understand that point of view, and I guess at the end of the day, look, it's a WWE production. They can take down what they want. But once again, it just looks like it's just not a good look on WWE's part, because it's just a case of, one, WWE being out of touch with what their fans want. They want Bray Wyatt, and they released him, and now he doesn't exist. It just... I don't know. But Bray Wyatt is rumored to be heading to AEW. The former WWE champion will become a free agent on October 29, just in time to possibly appear at the AEW Full Gear pay-per-view, which I think has been moved to November 13. So he could appear on a couple of Dynamite shows or Rampage shows before Full Gear as well. Speaking of Monday Night Raw as well, obviously we mentioned previously that Vince McMahon was not present in Miami for the Monday Labor Day edition of Raw, but the WWE Chairman and CEO did still help out with the creative for the show. As was noted previously, Vince was not backstage for Raw, and Senior Vice President and Executive Director Bruce Pritchard was in charge of the show. In an update, PW Insider has added that Vince was still involved with giving feedback and making some changes. I'm shocked! Vince making changes? I thought I would never see that. Of course he does make changes every week. But Bruce Pritchard was still in charge of the show. Pritchard did run the actual taping. On a related note, the tag team turmoil match was originally planned to be the main event of Raw and get a lot of TV time. The match ended up being the opening match and the main event of Raw and did carry over several segments. Of course, that ended with Bobby Lashley and MVP winning. They're going to be facing RK Bro next week. So, it's as is the case, because again, this is why I always find it funny when people say Vince wasn't at Raw. Vince wasn't at Raw. I couldn't believe he was at Raw. Given last night's news regarding Triple H, that might make a bit more sense. But the idea that, he's not there so he can't affect it. I mean, this is 2021. We've just had 18 months where people have been talking to each other remotely from all over the world, via Zoom or via telephone or via whatever. So the idea that he's not there, he can't influence anything, come on. I think that's pretty much impossible nowadays. The Miz is going to be on Dancing with the Stars. This has been rumored, but it was made official yesterday. WWE superstar The Miz has officially been announced for season 30. There have been 30 seasons of this, my goodness, of ABC's Dancing with the Stars. The season will premiere on Monday, September 20th. There's a load of other names been announced, but I don't watch the show. Obviously, it's Dancing with the Stars in the United States. Over here, it's Strictly Come Dancing. And again, I don't watch it, so it is what it is. The former WWE champion tweeted on the gig and wrote, quote, I'm learning the Paso Doble, Argentine, Tango, Waltz, Foxtrot are very difficult moves, then a skull-crushing finale or the figure 4 leg lock. Honored and excited to be a part of season 30 of Dancing with the Stars. Now let's get to work. Hashtag Dancing with the Stars. Now, of course, it'll be interesting to see how Dancing with the Stars impacts The Miz WWE career. He recently began a feud with former partner John Morrison, but their first match was cancelled a few weeks back, reportedly due to The Miz's Dancing with the Stars commitments. So I would assume, because this has happened in the past, whenever a a WWE star has done it. I think, has anyone really done it whilst they've been under contract? I think Nikki Bella did it, but she wasn't officially like full-time with WWE. As far as I'm aware, this is the first like full-time person to do it. We had Chris Jericho, Stacy Keibler, and Nikki Bella. Jericho and Keibler, I don't even know, were under contract to WWE when they did it back then. I mean, Keibler might have been, maybe. I don't know how that sort of went over. But The Miz is the first like full-time guy under contract to WWE to be doing it. I would just expect him to not be on television, which kind of flies in the face of, we just split them up, now Miz disappears. Maybe that's why they did it. I don't know. The only thing I will say is that The Miz like tore his ACL in May, and I know he's wrestled since, so his recovery was quicker than expected, but I mean, dancing is no joke. People can laugh at it, but dancing is no joke. Dancing on a recently torn ACL, ouch. That's going to be tough. So credit to The Miz, I guess. And WWE loves that publicity, brother. So they'll be going for that, I guess, as well. Finally, there's an update on Kushida, who, of course, has been absent from NXT television recently. He has revealed that he's out of action due to a positive COVID-19 test. As previously noted, Kushida was set to defend his championship against Roderick Strong back on the August 17 NXT show, but it was announced that he was not cleared to compete following a medical evaluation. At the time, no other details were announced. But in an update, Kushida posted the following Instagram video to reveal that he recently tested positive for COVID-19. He noted that he tested positive 3 weeks ago and his family also tested positive. Kushida said that he and his wife were fully vaccinated, but they still caught the virus. He added that everyone is okay now, but they're dealing with fatigue, a loss of smell and taste, and other symptoms. The family is currently recovering and feeling much better now. Kushida did not say when he will be back in action, but he will see everyone soon. So, best wishes to Kushida. Looks like he's on the road to recovery. It's no joke. Be sure to stay safe. Get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. And hopefully we can get out of this nightmare that continues to carry on in the near future. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.